All right, Entree Architect community, it's 4 p.m. Eastern, which means it's time for the Entree Architect Context and Clarity conversation for Thursday, February 10th, 2022. Thanks for joining us today. As you get here, say hi. Let us know that you're here and let us know where you're joining the conversation from. If we've never met before, my name is Jeff. I'm in Indianapolis. I come here every weekday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern for one reason, so that we can find clarity around the things that matter most to you, the architect. Doesn't matter if you're the employee of a firm or you own your own firm. Maybe you've circled a date on the calendar and you said 2022 is your year and you're on the runway to starting your own thing. Or maybe you have owned your own firm for a year or 10 years or 28 years, and you're starting to rethink or even reimagine what that firm could or maybe even should be. All of the topics that we cover, one topic every day, they all fall under the broad umbrella of the business of architecture, and they're all the need to know topics for the success of small firm architects just like you. So thanks for joining us today. As usual, for these Context and Clarity live conversations, I'm joined by my co-host, Katharine MacPhail, from just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. Hi, Katharine.
Hey, Jeff.
How are things just outside of Boston, Massachusetts today?
Well, pretty typical for a February afternoon. But you know what I was thinking? I was thinking that we didn't acknowledge our anniversary, and I don't feel a little awkward about that. But it's gone, it's passed. But just wanted to say that we've been doing this over a year now. That's it.
It's hard to believe, right?
It is
one of those things that boggles my mind all the time.
Yep.
We celebrated 450 Context and Clarity conversations on Monday, the daily, and then more than a year now of these. And I guess it's time once again to say thanks to everybody in the audience, because it's because of them that we're able to. It's because of all of you that we're able to do this and have guests like we have on today. So thank you for the reminder.
It's just been fun.
How long? It has been fun. Fun. Quite a list of guests, quite a list of topics. I think I said this earlier. I've said this a couple of times this week. I know that the topics that we've covered this week have sometimes been challenging. These are kind of introspective, really kind of working on ourselves kind of topics. We'll introduce our guest here in a minute, but I think they're important conversations. So thanks to everybody out there for being here, coming along on the ride, and making this possible for all of us. I see Sarah Lee has joined us from Salt Lake City, Utah. She's the first on my screen, which means that she is the winner of today's John Kenny Memorial Crocheted Bathtub Award. So thanks for joining us today, Sarah Lee. Christian's out there on Facebook, and John Jones is saying hello, but not from California. Okay, well, he hasn't gone from Connecticut to California, or maybe he's gone there and to come back. I don't know. But great to have you with us, John. I see Scott Thrift over there on LinkedIn and Chris Novelli on YouTube. Let's see, Diego's on YouTube from Nicaragua. Let's see, anybody else? Just looking to see if we have any of the other platforms joining us yet. We are streaming live right now, of course, to Facebook, to the Entree Architect Community Facebook group, also to LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. If you happen to be showing up, as a for instance, I see Sarah Lee. I see her graphic there. She's also got her bathtub sticker. She's joining from Facebook inside the private group, but her name shows up and her picture shows up. If you happen to be showing up as Facebook user with no picture, or if you happen to be commenting and your comments are not popping up on the screen, what you ought to do is go to the URL that's in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen right now. It's chat.restream.io/FB, as in Facebook. With a couple of clicks, you can re-establish, something the permissions. You can give Facebook permission to let your information out to Restream, which is the platform that we use for these, and that should solve all of your problems. So maybe everybody should just go do that. All of them, all the problems that you have will be solved by going to chat.restream.io/FB. Yes, thank you, Brian McCartney, from Vermilion, Ohio, by the way. Reauthorize. That's the word that we need, reauthorize. So go to chat.restream.io/FB if you're having having problems with that. But with that, great to have all of you here today. Thanks for joining us from all the places. And if you haven't said hi yet, say hi. Even if you're just listening in or multitasking, that's okay. We just like to know where everybody is and know that you're here for the conversation. One big community here. It's just great to get to know each other in these conversations. What have I left out? What have I missed at this point? Other than introducing our guest, which I need to do.
Oh, I think that's it. I think that's all.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get to it because I know that I know this has been a challenging week, right? There's some of these topics that we've covered. How do you define success, and what do you do? What do you do when you don't know what to do? And yesterday we talked about imposter syndrome, and all of these topics have been leading up to this conversation today. So, with that, let me tell you that our guest today is an architect, a founder, and a marketer. She's a jewelry maker, a traveler, and a tea connoisseur. Her journey of personal and career insecurity and growth is recorded on her YouTube channel. She's the founder of the Women Architects Collective, a personal brand strategist, and the product marketing manager at Monograph. Joann Lui, welcome to Context and Clarity Live.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's great to have you here. And we've got to let everybody know, we may experience some technical difficulties as we're going here. It's completely possible, but all of that is because today we're celebrating our first guest to ever join Context and Clarity Live from a yacht in the middle of the ocean outside of St. Martin. So, so we will happily deal with whatever technical issues we have just for that award, that alone. So Joann, thanks for joining us today. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Do I get a sticker of that next to me?
Yeah. So Sarah Lee, can you get us? Sarah Lee is like our queen of Facebook stickers somehow. I don't even know how those work. So Sarah Lee, can you find a yacht sticker for Joann? That would be awesome.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, and a gold star too, I think somehow. Well, maybe we've just got to start with, how did you end up on a yacht in the middle of the ocean outside of St. Martin?
Well, originally I was going to St. Kitts, which is another Caribbean island, because my boyfriend traveled a lot for work. So because I work remotely, so I just tag along with him while he's traveling, and we just happened to ended up on a yacht today, and happened to not be by any shore that I can't get to a coffee shop or internet. So hopefully this works. But I'm happy to be here.
It's great, and it's working just fine right now. And congratulations to you for just ending up on a yacht. It's great. Nicole wants to know if she gets a crocheted yacht instead of a crocheted bathtub. Yeah, sure. We need to create a new award. The furthest virtually traveled gets a crocheted yacht award now. So that'll be a new thing here on Context and Clarity. You said that you work remotely. So I want to, maybe the spot to begin is that you've said that you left your dream job. You've got a couple of YouTube videos actually about that. You left your dream job and now you're doing something else. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I was working at Gensler for 6 years as an architect, and at that time it was, I don't know why, but it was always my dream to work in an international firm in architecture ever since I started during school. So when I finally did that, I stayed there for 6 years, and until I would say it's actually almost a year. So last year, exactly in February, I switched my career into doing marketing at Monograph, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with Monograph. And I do mostly their
She froze up there here. So we'll
What do you think
get
she's
the
going to say?
rest
She
of that.
does mostly their what? We could just guess.
I think content marketing is what she's
Oh,
going to
okay.
say. So
All right, we'll see. We'll see when she comes
yeah,
back.
for those of you out there that are tuning in, if you haven't yet, you should go to Joann's YouTube channel, and so her, go to YouTube and just search her name, Joann,
Marketing.
Joa. Oh, maybe she's back. Nope. So go to YouTube and search Joann Lui. So JoAnnLui, and she's got several videos there, all very well produced. And in one of those videos, she talks about um, her, basically her origin story and the idea of working for an international architecture firm. And she's back. Hi, Joann.
We were just talking about you.
I'm just gonna
when,
keep popping
when
in and out also.
Yeah, that's no problem. When you dropped out, you had just talked about um, making the move over to Monograph. Gensler, you'd moved over to Monograph as a marketer, and you were about to say that what you were doing at Monograph.
So I do content marketing. So their blogs, their social media, I manage the content side.
Okay. So, in other videos that you have, which by the way, I was just encouraging everybody to go check out your YouTube channel. One of the things that I really appreciate about your videos, beyond the quality of them, by the way, beyond the production quality, is really the authenticity and the vulnerability. And you describe your journey, um, and you talk about you talk about things like your career change, obviously leaving architecture, but also how you think about and define success. So I think one question I want to ask is, you've been on this journey. You achieved your goals as you've described them, but then you've made a pivot, you've made a change. What have you learned about success and how you define success as you've gone through this journey, gone on this journey?
I think for me, like at this point, I just define success as whatever makes me happy. And usually what makes me happy now is just being able to help other people to achieve something. It doesn't matter if it's just helping them to be better architects or just seeing them have the courage to post on Instagram or on LinkedIn. Even small things like that, I think to me is what success means to me now.
So when we've got a lot of people in the community that, like I said, I mean, we've talked about we started out our weekly conversations this week talking about or asking the question, how do you define success? Um, how does Joann Lui define success for yourself, I guess?
I if I feel proud of things that I'm doing, I would define that as successful. And if I can make someone help them be successful in whatever they think success is and just help them achieve something, that to me is also success. I think to me it's less about like getting promotions or getting awards, and which I used to get a lot. And I think now it's really just about like giving back and helping other people in the community and just seeing them flourish. To me is what success is now.
There's something that I think I don't know if irony is the right word, but when we were talking about this, a lot of people um, had some version of what you just said. Basically, if I'm able to help, if I'm able to, do whatever, and a lot of these definitions became about someone else, right? Someone outside of ourself in terms of helping and serving
Mm-hmm.
other people. Um, and yet at the heart of what we're talking about is this idea of a personal brand. So how do you, when you're thinking about and talking about building a personal brand, and at the same time thinking of success in terms of someone else, how do those things marry up? Does that make sense? That's not a really It's not really well formulated in my head as it's coming out.
I think that makes sense. I think a personal brand, when most people see it, they think about how many followers do I get, how many likes do I get, how many comments do I get when I post. But that's not really the measurement of success, to me, at least for your online presence. To me, it's like if I get someone that send me a DM and tell me this Instagram post you made is really helpful, or that this YouTube channel you may have helped me in some way, that to me is like good enough. I don't need to have a million subscribers to my YouTube channel for me personally to feel like I'm a success. I think seeing less the vanity metric of how many followers you get, but more on the impact you're making on the people that you want to help. Is like that switch that you need to be aware of when you're building a personal brand.
So you talk about this a lot in terms of your online presence, which makes total sense, right? For a lot of reasons. One because pandemic and a lot of us have spent the majority of our lives the last 2 years or more online. Two, because like you said, you're doing content marketing and social media and things like that. But is there some aspect of what you're talking about in terms of a personal brand that has nothing to do with online? That's just, what about in real skin, as the kids used to say? Um, does the personal brand conversation come into play in real life? In a personal person to person scenario as well?
Yeah, I think so, because you don't want to have like a totally different online presence that doesn't match up with who you are in person. So if I ask someone in person, like at a conference or whatever, I want to make sure what I'm saying online matches up with how I am in person. And so it's crafting that online presence, but at the same time, it's really just representing who you are in real life. And that's the same way. That's the same way that you would talk to your coworkers, your people. And I'm also like to tell people when I talk about personal branding is you feel a personal brand at work. It's not just on social media. It's when you're in the office. If you're trying to like get a promotion, or you're trying to just like be known for something, you can build a personal brand at work, in the office, in real life, like in person, instead of just focusing on social media.
So Christian was wondering today, how authentic is authentic? Like, what should you not, well, that's kind of a question that speaks for itself.
That's a great question. I think whatever you feel comfortable sharing. I know, like I have worked with people who don't feel comfortable sharing their own like family life or their own personal life, and that's totally fine. Like you don't have to like being authentic doesn't mean you have to like share everything about your life, like your baby or your dog pictures. But it's really just about that boundary where you want to set the line and what you want to be sharing. And being authentic really just means that you are saying the same thing you would say in person. You are saying things that are true to yourself that you feel proud of. And that's, I think, is just what authentic means. It doesn't mean that you have to like share everything that's going on in your life if you don't want to.
I think that's really interesting, and I love Christian's question. We talked about this morning on Clubhouse. So, those of you that are out there that aren't aware, every morning on the Clubhouse app at 9 a.m. Eastern, we have what we call our context and clarity coffee talks. Same topics that we cover in the afternoon, but it's on Clubhouse. It's on a different app, which is voice only, and maybe more casual and maybe shorter. But when Christian brought that question up this morning, he tied it back to Context and Clarity Live last week, where we talked to Jesse Cole, who's the owner of the Savannah Bananas. He's the guy that wears a yellow tux all the time. And there you go, Katharine's got the Savannah Bananas pint glass there. Jesse talked about the fact that the yellow tux is him, right? It's not me, right? I'm sitting here in my black Zoom shirt basically, and he was there in his yellow tuxedo. But what he said was, the yellow tuxedo fit his personality, and in fact amplified his personality. He doesn't wear it all the time, right? He doesn't wear it probably at the dinner table with the family, but when he goes to the ballpark, when he makes these public appearances, that the tuxedo is there. That's part of his brand, and it amplifies his personality. Is that, in a way, right? When you're saying you don't, just because you're authentic, you're not sharing absolutely everything, not complete transparency, I guess. Does the idea of, in certain contexts, I guess, amplifying your personality, does that fit into what you're saying as well?
I think so. I think that I think most of the time when people build their personal brand, they try to come, like, for example, if you're an introvert, people always think you're an extrovert too, like build your personal brand and talk and show up online. But it's really taking your personality. For example, I'm a very shy, quiet person. So when you watch my YouTube video, you would probably get a more calming and comfortable feeling than, let's say, other very exciting TV personality that you'll see online. And really just taking what really is your personality and putting it out there and amplifying that is a way to for the authenticity to show up, and not trying to be like this like crazy party person just because you're like trying to create content online.
That makes sense to me. I think there are a couple questions here, and one of them's from actually. Hello to Justin Alpert out there in Boston. Great to have you here.
Oh, okay. So this question is for your personal brand. Who is your target market? I assume that's supposed to say that you were looking to reach.
For me, my personal brand is helping other architects. Mostly, I would say, is younger architects who either are trying to improve their career by using a personal brand, or most of my clients are to start their own firm who wants to use their personal brand to start their own firm, or in early stages of their firm. So those are currently my target market.
Can I ask you a question, Joann? So when you're talking about personal brand, what exactly do you mean? Are you only talking about on Instagram or something like that, whatever kind of photos you show? Or are you talking about like having everything you do be on brand, like the restaurants you go to and the shoes you buy and like your haircut and your earrings and everything? Is that like personal brand where you have this everything in your life has to be on brand? Or do you just mean like on social media?
For me, everything is mostly online because I work mostly with social media and content marketing. But you could brand yourself in real life instead if you want to dress a certain way. I mean, that's just part of your style and part of your, it could even match up to your own design style if you want. I mean, but I think for most texts, we just dress pretty simply in like really solid colors. So I don't think there's like much that we usually do in how like we dress. But I would say my kind of define what a personal brand is. A personal brand is basically trying to match up what other people perceive of you to what you perceive of yourself. So you're trying to match up other people's perception to your own and finding a way to basically have other people think of you the same way that you want them to think about you. And that's through multiple of things. That's through, social media online, through content. That's also through maybe the way you present a lot to clients in your firm and the way that you talk, the way that you present, all the way to the actual design style that you create in your work. And that's also could be part of your personal brand if you want to. So it's just this idea of creating a brand where people see you in the way that you want them to perceive you.
We had a couple questions today that I just had another one on there where James was talking about how do you repair your personal brand if somebody has been doing kind of personal attacks and trying to sway public opinion on you in some public way. Also, Chris wanted to know what steps can be taken to evolve your brand from where you are to where you want to be. So I think those are kind of related because they both have to do with crafting your brand and people's perception of you. But what if people don't like you that much or think you're, it doesn't match with what you actually are authentically? Or maybe it does, but that's not what you want to be perceived as. Anyway.
Yeah, so I would say honestly, it's consistency and persistence. The more content you can share for me, it's more online. So I'm going to talk about online content creation. Is the more content you can share online, the more you share your actual opinions and thoughts, and that's what we call leadership. The more you do that, the more people will start hearing what you are actually saying and what you're thinking about. That would help switch their perception of you. Like let's say if right now you are in, I don't know, you're in architecture and you somehow want to change your brand to hospitality. If you start talking about it, just start sharing ideas, sharing your thoughts, opinions, people start seeing you as a thought leader in that area and slowly change your brand that way. So it's really just all about consistently sharing your thoughts and your opinions.
Okay, so if people have been speaking negatively about you, then just showing up more with the message that you want to convey is the way to go on that, probably. Sounds like. That's not me. I'm asking for a friend.
You don't really care about people that speak about you negatively because we can't please. I think we talked about this yesterday. We can't please everyone in the universe, especially online. There are a lot of trolls, a lot of negative comments, a lot of people that would somehow project their own insecurity on you because you're the one showing up online, putting yourself out there. So I honestly just don't really care about the negative things that people say and try to just consistently showing up and keep.
Sarah Lee says that she's seen some of your videos and they're full of good content. And thank you for sharing your journey. And I'd like to echo that because again, I would encourage everybody to go to Joann's YouTube channel and check those out because there is a lot of good content there. I also want to invite Sony to sponsor our show here because I want the camera that Joann has for her setup.
Well,
It's
you could
really
just buy
nice.
that for yourself, Jeff.
I could
It might be easier than getting Sony to sponsor us.
perhaps it could be. Um, going back to Justin's question a few minutes ago, I think it's obviously we heard that Joann's target market with her personal brand is other architects because that's who she's trying to help. And I think um, hopefully we can get to asking this question, assuming that we um, can get her back here with the the difficulties from her location where she is. But I think it brings up a good question, right? What's the difference between here she is?
Yes, I want to know that. That's why I'm confused about.
Okay,
What's the difference between personal brand and business brand? You were going to say, I think.
That is exactly what I was going to say.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get ahead of that there.
No, it's perfect. It was a good guess. It's a good guess. Joann, when we're thinking about, you were talking about your target market or who you target, I guess, for your personal brand. You were talking about other architects because that's who you're helping. I know Justin a little bit, and I know that his target for his business brand is chef-owned restaurants in Boston and Cambridge, Massachusetts. What's the difference? And here's a great question. Same question from Caitlin Parker too. As a sole practitioner, what's the difference between your personal brand and your business brand?
So the biggest difference is your business. Usually, a personal brand is branded under your own name, and also using your own face a lot. A personal brand is much more about you. A business brand is much more about your company and your business. And usually people would ask me like, should I build a personal brand or should I build a business brand? And usually I would just tell them, it depends if you want a brand that's go with you forever. Let's say if you use your own name, if you're the face of the brand, is harder to sell in the future. Like 10 years from now, you grow this big business and you want to sell it, is much harder because the clients and the audience is already connected to you. But if you build a business brand like Nike or Coca-Cola, where there's no face, no person per se behind it, is much easier to sell in the future. So if you want a brand that's bigger than you, that's like a giant business at the end of the day, build a business brand, build a company brand. But if you want a brand that just stays with you and changes with you wherever you're in your career, or you start your own firm, or later on you want to change it to something totally different, it's much easier with a personal brand. And it's also much easier to connect with other people when you're a personal brand, because people just like seeing people's faces, and they just connect with it better. So I would say mostly is that the difference is how much do you want to be involved in your business, right? Because if you're your own personal brand and that becomes your business, you have to constantly show your face. You have to be the person on the personal brand. But if you don't want that, if you don't care about that, you just want a business that's like a bigger impact down the line, build a business brand that doesn't have your face on it is totally fine as well.
Okay. Apologies in advance to everyone because I'm jumping straight into that rabbit hole. I don't know, Joann, if you have heard about this. This is relatively current event, but the current staff, the current ownership of Zaha Hadid Architects, just paid Zaha's estate $16 million for the rights to use her name. For those of you out there that aren't familiar, Zaha Hadid passed away in, I think, March of 2016. Zaha Hadid Architects has been operating under the ZHA name since then, and so they purchased the name. And this is it's an extreme example, right, with Zaha. But this is part of what you're talking about, right? There's a personal brand, I guess, blurring the lines with a business brand. And now in this extreme case, they're paying $16 million for the rights to her name. I don't know if there's anybody in the audience that aspires to that level, basically, that level of brandedness, whatever the correct term is. But are you familiar with what's going on there?
I haven't really looked into it, no, but that's interesting. It's like buying the name out, and I think it's very different when your brand, I don't know, when the person behind your brand disappear. I feel like it makes it very hard to continue. But I'm interested to see how they continue to do that.
Yeah, I think one of the big questions in that scenario is how long, right? They're buying her name, but she's obviously not there. No one expects her to be there. Everyone knows that she's passed away. So how long do they successfully continue under that brand? So it's just a little bit of an intriguing academic exercise, I guess.
I have a question. Do you think, I mean, I think you kind of just mentioned it, but do you think it is because she's no longer with us? Like if she just decided to retire, would she be able to sell her name like that? I don't think so. I don't know. But maybe you have to be famous and no longer alive.
That's a really great point. That you may be absolutely right about that. Hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah.
So you've got a question here, Katharine, from Christian, it looks like.
Christian, is he asking me where is it? The old one? Oh, that's the one. Can your personal brand? He just actually texted me and asked me if I was typing during context and clarity. So I thought, did he actually write that in on the chat too? No, not typing. Can your personal brand and your business brand be very different? Christian wants, I think Christian's, oh.
Okay.
Oh, phew. Well, anyway, that was not me eating Fritos or typing, just in case people are saying stuff about me. But I can't help what people say about me and my personal brand, I guess.
Yeah, and
believe I would
remember, if you didn't hear this at the beginning, Joann is on a yacht in the ocean, so we are expecting technical difficulties here, and maybe some really strange sounds in the background as well, coming out of the matrix or wherever the rabbit hole or wherever they came from. Let's see, here she is. We'll bring her back in.
Well, so Jane was saying that Zaha had a jewelry line that launched right before her death. So maybe that was part of her plan, selling her name all along. I honestly don't know.
Yeah, perhaps. Well, at the same time, we'll get to the question from Christian here momentarily, but at the same time, HOK didn't start out as HOK, and SOM didn't start out as SOM. Gensler, I guess, started out with Art's name, but it's again a fascinating academic exercise to talk about, especially in the world of professional services, when Skidmore, Owens and Merrill becomes SOM, and so on and so forth. Zaha becomes ZHA. But anyway, Christian asked, can your personal brand and your business brand be very different? So, your brand as a business be, I don't know, polar opposite of what your personal brand is. Does that make any sense?
I mean, you could if you want to run two different brands, but that would be a lot of work and a lot of energy that's probably not worth it. But for most architects, I try to help them build a brand, for their business, for their firm, if they own a firm. But also at the same time build a brand inside the industry. So like doing speaking engagements or going on podcasts within the architecture community. And you could kind of see those as like your personal brand, your business brand, but it's really just one brand at the end of the day because it's just you. And I wouldn't advise to build two different brands just because of the effort and energy that it would take. It's just too much work.
Well, one of the things that I also think is very interesting about your point of view, because I said this the other day, right? If I work on branding, it's one of the things that I do, and if I were talking about personal brand, I would have a little bit different approach to it than you do, but that's a matter of perspective, right? Your approach really has come from the employee side, and mine not. So I don't know if we have any in the audience, any students in the audience, or anybody that's an employee of a firm. But can you talk just a little bit? I know you touched on this a little bit earlier, but this idea, just and sorry, spoiler alert to all of you out there, this is actually our topic for tomorrow's discussion as well, is can you have or should you have a personal brand as an employee, right? And I know that's kind of where your story begins. If I'm an employee of Gensler or ZHA or anything, should I have my own personal brand as an employee?
Yes, absolutely. That's how I started with my own personal brand as an employee. And the reason I started building my personal brand was because back in 2013 or 2012, at a much smaller firm, I was forgotten for a raise. And I didn't want that to ever happen again. So I started building my personal brand. I started like just writing articles or sharing posts online. I started a small blog on architecture and just kind of trying different things to see what works. And then I joined Gensler, which also, while I was at Gensler, I also did a lot of speaking engagements and interviews and stuff like that to build my personal brand. And just to be transparent and honest, is that ever since I started building my personal brand, I never had to ask for a raise again. I never went to my boss and say, hey, I need a raise. But every year I would just automatically get a raise. And it was always like about 10-15% raise every year. And that was all because I was putting myself out there so much, and everyone knows me, and they see the value that you bring, not just to the firm but to the whole industry, because people outside of the firm also is listening to you, following you, and they start valuing your opinions per se. And then you don't have to consistently trying to ask for a raise if you're an employee, at least in my case. And that was the whole reason why I built a personal brand. So yes, if you're an employee, you totally should, if you have the time to build a personal brand.
Would I be allowed to ask the question, Jeff? I don't know why I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Well, it's because
there you go.
I have muted myself. Thank you. This is the height of professionalism here. Um, one of the that's one of the things that um, one of my big takeaways, I guess, from one of your videos was this idea of creating the personal brand, maybe even as a way to advocate for yourself, and that's one of the things that I hope a lot of folks take away from this conversation as well. Um, like as Joann was saying, even beyond the raise, I'm sure there's more to it than that. But as a way to be heard and to advocate for yourself and your career and whatever's next in your journey. Katharine, did you have a
Yeah.
question
I
that you wanted to ask?
did. I just didn't know whether we could, if it was rude to ask if Monograph pays better than. I mean, I know what they would say in the Northeast here where I am. Yes, it's rude to ask if Monograph pays better than Gensler. Gensler has better benefits and flex time. But I just put the comments up. I don't make them.
All right, just to be honest, I would say the pay at Monograph is higher because it's kind of the same because against I was working a lot of overtime and they pay overtime. But at Monograph, I don't have to work overtime to get the same amount of money. And we also work a 4-day work week, so technically I get 52 days off, right? Yeah, a year. And I get to be working remotely and it's still very flexible. So yes,
Are you
I would
working
say
right now?
I am working on this trip, yes.
Wow.
Appearing on Context and Clarity qualifies as work, Katharine.
Hey, it works for me. If you could work on a yacht, I bet you would. I might.
I absolutely would. Absolutely. When and I know you talk about it in your videos. There's a couple of videos, and again, for all of you out there, if you haven't yet, go watch the videos on Joann's YouTube channel. But you talk about this transition from what you called your dream job, Gensler, to Monograph, and it not that it was an accident, but it wasn't necessarily planned, was it? This journey has had some serendipity to it, I guess.
Yeah, so it happened kind of organically. So what happened was a long time ago, probably 5 or 7 years ago, I started blogs and I've been building different blogs for years. And I was also interested in operations and the tech side of architecture because at Gensler, I was actually the process design. I help project teams design their processes to help them work more efficiently using technology. And I came across Monograph and I saw their website. It's like, this is a company I'm going to work for next because it fits my skills so much that with the marketing skills I have and the architecture background that I have and the process and operation that I have. It just kind of matches up all perfectly. So when I saw their website, I decided I joined the architect community and I reached out to George. And at that time, they were hiring for writers to write their blogs. So I applied to be a writer. And I got a call with George, who is the head of marketing at Monograph. And we started talking. I was telling him about my experience doing content and blogging and social media, and I started consulting them as a content strategist and SEO strategist for about 6 to 8 months, just part-time on the side. Eventually they had an opening, they offered me a full-time position with them, and then kind of step-by-step journey.
It's a fascinating journey. And I know, I mentioned as I introduced you that you're the founder of the Women's Architects Collective, and um, there are a lot of things that you do. Obviously, the I think we would be remiss to not ask. Right, we're talking about personal brand, and you mentioned earlier when um, people have things to say that we may not agree with, things that may be negative. We have to ignore those types of things. How does how does all of the background and expectations that all of us have to deal with, some more than others, right? It may be family pressures, it may be cultural pressures. Um, um, how how do we take all of those things in consideration and really, yeah, and I'm going to go back to you talking about advocating for yourself and being confident in your own voice with all the pressures that are out there. Do you have any tips for somebody that may feel insecure about all those pressures? What do you do? How do you handle all of those things?
Ooh, that's a very deep, heavy question.
It is.
um, I personally, when I would say before I started like showing up on videos or doing Instagram stories and having a YouTube channel, it was really hard for me to talk to a camera, or just do any kind of speaking or even client presentation at work. It was really hard because I don't know if maybe it's my Asian culture, or maybe it's because like when I was a kid, my mom always tell me never ask for anything, like just be humble, don't brag about yourself. If my aunt asked me if I would want a birthday present for my birthday, she would tell me, say no, don't, be humble, don't take anything. And then you come to America, which is a totally different culture, where especially in corporate America, you have to speak up for yourself. You have to ask for things. If you want to work on certain projects, you have to tell your boss you want to work on certain projects. And honestly, it's just, I think, from experience, learning from different, just through so many trials and errors, that eventually I'm like, okay, I gotta really start speaking up for myself, because if I don't, I'm gonna get burned out, which I did, and that didn't feel good. And if it was so bad to a point where I just said to myself, if my boss give me any more work, I'm just gonna say no. I'm just gonna tell him like I cannot take on more work because this is just unhealthy. And I hope it doesn't. I hope everyone out there doesn't have to get to the point of burnout to realize that you need to speak up for yourself and advocate for yourself. And I think that is really through practicing and having the experience. And in a firm setting, I would say try to find an advocate or a mentor within your firm if you're an employee like me, like I was. And really just having that mentor really helped. I had a mentor at Gensler who was also Asian and a woman, and she was also like a little Asian woman who was a director there, and I spoke to her constantly, and I tried to talk to her and ask her questions, and she would tell me her story, how she used to struggle with presentation. So I think having that also really helped, is like that support system within your firm.
Sorry. I think there are several good takeaways from that, and I realize we're right at the top of the hour here as well. So um, we'll try to land this here fairly gracefully as we come in. But think about all the people out there in the audience, um, and you talked about practicing and trying to avoid burnout as well. What's the one thing maybe that everybody needs to keep in mind and start practicing right now?
I would say whenever you're doing something, like either doing your work at work or sharing content online like I do, just ask yourself, is this true to you? Are you proud of what you're doing? And if those two things you say yes to, that's good enough, and you don't have to seek that external validation, like how we talk about imposter syndrome. And you don't have to be afraid of other people's judgment. As long as you're proud of what you're doing and what you're doing is authentic and true to yourself. And I think that's just what we have to keep in mind, especially when you're building a personal brand.
I think that's very good advice. And realizing, again, all the conversations that we've been having this week are and the topics we've been discussing this week are not necessarily easy conversations or easy topics. So, but I do think, as you said, that external validation is not everything that we need, right? And I love your message about advocating for yourself and speaking up for yourself, and even just simply saying no. So thank you for this conversation today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been great. And for those of you in the audience, thank you for joining us. Thanks for all your questions and comments. I hope you got as much out of this conversation as I did. And again, I encourage everybody to jump on over to YouTube and check out Joann's YouTube channel. It's JoAnnLui, and you find some great videos, great content there. Check that out. And Joann's also a member of the Entre Architect community Facebook group, so she's part of our community. So you can maybe message her on Facebook or reach out to her. But thanks to all of you. Katharine, thanks again for co-hosting this with me. And to everybody out there, please take care of yourselves. Be well and be safe. Find a little time this evening, this afternoon, today, wherever you are in the world, to breathe a little bit and relax. Find some way to get rejuvenated, because we're going to do this all over again tomorrow. So take a little bit of time to find some new perspective as we get ready to do this again, as we do every day. So again, thanks everybody. Appreciate all of you. To give you a little bit of a preview before we go, next week on Context and Clarity Live, we'll be right back here. We will have Jane Walton. Jane is a consultant and an author. Her newest book is Work as Art. So we'll talk to Jane next week, next Thursday, which should be February 17th. So look forward to that, and another full week of Context and Clarity next week. So with that, again, thanks everybody. Appreciate all of you. Thanks to you, Joann, and I hope we will see everybody somewhere sometime soon. Thanks, everybody.